So you always want to be a painkiller because a vitamin is like a slow drip and overall like things are better for you. And so people buy vitamins because they're like, oh, this is helpful over time. But in order to start a business and really grow it and sell it, you really want to be a painkiller. And what's more of a pain than cash flow issues, following up with clients? Really, it's a task that nobody really wants to own, but the outcome is so important to the business that if you don't collect, you start to have to get into working capital loans. You start to have to deal with, are you going to hit payroll? And so to me, that always stuck with me being a painkiller.
Hi, I'm Mike Pincus, co-founder at Connect CPA and your host at GrowthTales. Today, we have an exciting guest in Matt Himel, who's the CEO of Harvest. It's an accounts receivable automation software that tackles the pain point of collection on overdue invoices. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
First of all, I really appreciate you taking the time, and we operate in a really similar space. So it's something that's of big interest to me. But before we jump into Harvest, I wanted to just ask you, what made you want to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a great question. I went to business school, and one day it's funny the admissions person for Western Law came into our business school for like a lunch and learn, and she told us that they were opening up a bunch of spots for undergraduate business students. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I could go to law school, and so I ended up applying to law school, and always much more enjoyed go to business school. But law school teaches you a whole different way of thinking and assessing situations, and really value my time there. When you graduate law school, unfortunately, what's really waiting for you is law firms. Nobody told me that, but
Yeah.
that's really what's waiting for you. And decided, I gave it a good go at law school. I might as well, kick the tires on a short law career. When we graduated law school, two buddies of mine and I went to write the bar exam, and the bar exam in Ontario is these two thick books, open book exam, multiple choice, and there's absolutely no materials built to practice for it because it's a very high pass rate. And so we got bored out of our minds studying for it and paid a teacher to draft some questions, just so we would have any excuse not to read the materials anymore. And all of our friends and everyone we knew started emailing us saying, "Can you send us the questions? Can you send us the questions?" And so we're like, "Oh, we're on to something." So the next year, we had already written the bar, but we put them online. We gate kept them a little bit, some sort of, hack, and started selling them, and they sold like hotcakes. And thus started my entrepreneurial career outside of my legal practice. And, one thing a lot of people don't tell you that go into law, I think there's this expectation that like it's a great career and it's, great financially, but, it's very tough, and, you work a lot of hours, and there's a lot of people who are a little miserable doing so. But my experience, I worked at an amazing firm. One of my biggest takeaways was the people I worked with actually loved doing what they were doing. And that helped me dramatically realize that, law wasn't for me, because they were just so emphatically excited about the law. And then like that was a reverse, like it ended up being really helpful. So I took kind of the experience we had with the bar exam, which we still operate today. Has been around for like 15 years, been an amazing kind of mini entrepreneurial success story. Took my experience there, quit my law firm after about 4 or 5 years, and applied to a bunch of kind of the satellite offices, the Ubers, the Lyfts,
Yep.
it was 2014 or so. So a bunch of tech companies were opening, and none of them wanted me. Absolutely none of them. It was very disheartening. They're all like, why are we hiring a lawyer? Doesn't make any sense.
All that time in school.
And I really had to reframe. I really had to reframe who I was and, why I thought I could add value. And luckily, um, I got taken in by a company called Tilt, which exited to Airbnb, and there's a great story there. And then once Airbnb acquired Tilt, I got lucky enough to connect with Derek and Derek finally at Drop, and so forth and so forth. But yes, that was my weird path towards entrepreneurship.
Wow. So, and by the way, that's I think a common story. I know a lot of lawyers, and I think it's similar to the accounting space where the vast majority go into industry, but you're right, you graduate and all these law firms are looking for you because there's a shortage of talent, obviously. So that's sounds like a great foundation. The fact that you got into entrepreneurship, had a professional background, Matt. But what led you to Harvest, and what is the origin story? Because like accounts receivable for a lawyer is a different world. How did this all come about?
Lawyers are actually horrible with their accounts receivable. We'll park that for a different day, but they're very good at, well, they're bad at getting their billings in. That's one, right? So you have to bill every hour, and that's just, oh, someone needs to fix that just,
Oh yeah.
holistically. And I think they're working on it, but yes, billing every hour sucks. And then billing a client for those hours sucks, and collecting from someone who's continuing to be a client sucks. So anyway, it wasn't the genesis of my legal experience that led to Harvest. Really, once I got more senior in my career and we got to drop, and I was a revenue leader, one of the things I hated the most was when finance would reach out to us and say, hey, can you help us with some of these overdue invoices that we need to collect? And you say, you know what? I manage a sales team. They're out there selling or upselling our existing clients. I manage our client success team. They're putting out fires with our existing clients. It's really not great to go to an account manager or client success manager or even a salesperson and say, hey, can you get involved in like collecting an outstanding invoice? They really don't want to get involved. And when they do, it derails kind of some of the conversations that they're already having that's trying to drive revenue. And so, ultimately, if someone doesn't pay, obviously we have to get involved. So I would go to finance and say, hey, show me the breadcrumbs. Like, what have you guys been doing in order to collect this? And, there'd be an automated invoice that would go out, and maybe an automated follow up, but they really weren't actively pushing a lot of our clients to pay. And then it would get dramatically, you know, late. And so
Mhm.
you get to 60 or 90 days, and then all of a sudden your client's not really taking your collection efforts seriously. And so when the time you do reach out, they're like, well, they've waited a long time. So part of those frustrations for sure. And then there's a couple other pieces of Harvest. One is I really wanted to build a company in AI. When I was at Drop, we had been around I was there for 8 years. Obviously AI wasn't even in the conversation when we started the business. And obviously you try to weave it through some of your operational um, like efficiencies once you've already developed a company, but it wasn't AI first. And so I knew when I wanted to start a new business, leaving Drop, that I wanted to be AI first. And when you look at AI, to me, what you really want is something that's data rich. So, like accounting software already houses basically all the data that you would require for an accounts receivable or like invoice automation
Mhm.
company, and a repeatable task. Like those two things complement AI really well. Um, and so, when I was looking for a business, I knew I wanted to combine those two things. And I combined that with kind of my pain point, being a revenue leader, and we got there. There are a number of businesses in the US that are somewhat similar that are spreading out and having raised money from Simple Ventures. They have a business model, which is we want to provide um, services in Canada to startups, to businesses, to SMBs that they just don't get access to because there's a lot of amazing companies in the US that just go to market there. And so we surveyed the landscape there. We looked at some of the pain points that I had at Drop, and um, what we thought AI could do. And that's where kind of Harvest was born. The last thing I'll add is when I went to Tilt for the first time, I got introduced to this concept of painkiller and vitamin. Have you
Yeah.
heard?
Oh, of
It was a
course.
very
Yeah.
popular like startup thing, right? And so you always want to be a painkiller because a vitamin is like a slow drip, and overall, like things are better for you. And so people buy vitamins because they're like, oh, this is helpful over time. But in order to start a business and really grow it and sell it, and I'm in the midst of still, running a lot of founder-led sales at Harvest, you really want to be a painkiller. And what's more of a pain than, cash flow issues, following up with clients? Really, it's a task that nobody really wants to own. But the outcome is so important to the business that if you don't collect, you start to have to get into working capital loans. You start to have to deal with, are you going to hit payroll? And so to me, that always stuck with me, being a painkiller. And I just as we started to have conversations with either heads of finance or CEOs, you can see the pain on their face.
Yeah.
And when I know I have a really great customer, is they're like, Matt, you couldn't have come at a better time. Like we're knee deep in this right now. And I would love for you to help us solve that. And so kind of Harvest was the combination of all of those factors into one. And we're really excited to see where the business has come in just a short while.
No, I think that's a great description. I follow a lot of SaaS business gurus. I think one of them is Jason Lemkin, and I think this was his quote. I don't know who said this, but it was something along the lines of the only way a business can fail is A, the founder gives up, or B, you run out of cash. And so you're 100% right that cash is at the forefront of literally the minds of every single business, not P&L, not balance sheet in particular, just cash flow is that thing that you just need it to survive. It's the oxygen, right? And so when you're describing Painkiller, I completely can relate to just in the space that Connect CPAs in as well. It's all about cash, right?
One thing you'll really appreciate, Mike, because I'm sure, when you chat with founders or people that are coming to you for new business and you ask them to describe their like current financial situation, I bet you the vast majority of them are very generous to themselves. But then once you guys, get in there, you see, oh, well, like, they described revenue in this way, but really it's that or whatever it is, right? Like they're always rose colored glasses. And we see this all the time. And obviously my clients are great, so I'm not giving them
Yeah.
a hard time. But what you see is people say, "Oh yeah, AR is like an issue, and we'd love for you to help us with this, and let's connect." And but it's not so bad, and there's not that many invoices, and like the amount outstanding is very manageable. And the ball never lies, or in this case, like the API never lies, because when we connect to their invoicing software and we work with Xero, we work with QuickBooks, you get a very real time view of where their AR is. It's very, very frequently much worse than how they stated it when we were doing the sales calls. So, sometimes people just have a hard time being really honest with themselves about their financial situation. And that's fine. That's what you guys are there to help with. That's what we're there to help with. And so, it's just very interesting, and creates a challenge for founders when they're not honest with themselves, and all of a sudden, it comes to a point where they can't make payroll, or they run out of cash.
That's a great point. And I wonder how much of your go to market with Harvest is the education piece of, like you said, you come in, you meet a founder or a VP finance or CFO, and they're like, it's not that big a deal. We've got a few tire kickers, it's not that bad. But then you display to them, be like, you know what? If you accelerated these 5 things, that's $500,000 in the next 6 months. And they're like, oh, I didn't look at it that way. Like how much does education play a role in people understanding the implications to their business?
It's huge. It's a really good point, Mike. There's a couple of things that I'll say on a sales call, and not all of them will necessarily hit. And we're still working on which kind of benefit that someone derives from Harvest is the ultimate hitter. But when you hit it, you've got the sale. So I actually posted on LinkedIn yesterday about this one, but I've had a week's worth of onboardings where our clients are actually happiest just having like a scapegoat, right? So they're basically
Mhm.
paying an empty AR agent to be the bad cop for them. And just having another layer to their outreach allows the finance person to no longer be the bad guy or
Yeah.
bad person. And then also, like, there's leverage, right? Because what's happening is if you send an automated invoice and nobody responds, and you send another one, nobody responds, and then finance reaches out and says, "Hey, we've sent you this," and nobody responds, they have nowhere to go. Like, they just keep sending notes, or they have to go to C-suite, or they have to go to the account manager or whoever it is and say, "Hey, like, we sent this, then I jumped in, there's nowhere to go." So what ends up happening is you create a new layer to that outreach, which is like your accounts receivable person, without
Mhm.
actually having to hire anyone and do benefits and, worry
The
about
whole nine. Yeah.
vacation and like the whole nine. And you just add, we have Pat, we have Luca, we have Ruth, people like coming up with names, but you add someone And all of a sudden you have another layer. So you can send it automated, or, Ruth can reach out, and then finance can come on top and say, hey, my colleague Ruth has sent like 8 follow-ups. Like, what's going on over there? Do you guys need a little bit more time? Like, I know it's a, tricky part of the year. Like, let us know. And be the good cop and be the partner to the partner without having to then, always have to reach out to C-suite or the AM. And so like this week, unanimously, that was hitting before all of the amazing, other aspects of harvest that do really well, which is, can you, reduce DSO, right? Like, can you just get paid faster?
Mhm.
Um, can you save resources, right? Like 80 to 85% of the emails we send can be automated. There's like
Mhm.
no reason why somebody needs to get involved. Vast majority of emails are, here's your invoice, following up on your invoice, taking payment. Anything strategic or disputed can totally be handled by someone on the team, but they don't need to be handling the first 80%. They should just be focused on the last 20%. And so you save it just a ton of energy and time. And most importantly, it's just not a great task, right? Like, nobody enjoys. Very rarely do I come across someone who's like, what I love is coming in on a Monday, pulling, the AR report, and figuring out where I am in as far as like emailing and communicating with people who owe us money, right? And so, there's different ways of proving to people that harvest is really effective from a financial perspective, but sometimes it's just that like completely qualitative like benefit of just being able to sleep at night knowing somebody's doing your outreach for you, having someone that you can point to as the bad cop and so forth.
Yeah, and I think a point you made there, which is like you can almost set it and forget it, meaning let the technology be dynamic for you. People are not disciplined. So I think your point's valid that like how often are people actually following up on receivables? So it's one thing to say, yes, a human in the loop can go and call or email or whatever it might be, but how often is that actually happening? And if in the average phone call or sales call that you have with Harvest, you notice there's a big bucket of over 60 days, 90 days, well, that just tells you that obviously there isn't that discipline over it and there isn't someone dedicated 90% of the time. And so the best function to handle that is to have it automated in some respects. Now, when I say automated, by the way, obviously I'm going to ask you about AI and
Yeah.
advanced technology around.
Yeah.
It's not just like, hey, automation just means like a basic, like we're going to do an email out. But I wanted to ask you the actual function itself, what percentage of companies do you think are deficient of not even following up at all?
Look, like, as a human, we make decisions based on kind of how we feel. You don't want to send a follow up on a Friday afternoon. It feels like not the right time. Even if the person gets it, they ignore it. Then what do you do Monday morning if you feel like they ignored you and, aren't paying the invoice that you sent out? Do you send it Monday morning when oh, they're probably pretty busy? Should I wait and so forth? And so you have all this kind of like human emotion, put into it. We have the reverse, which is we're democratizing best practices, and our system is learning as it goes. It knows the best time to send an email.
Mhm.
It knows, the best subject matter to like put in the subject headlines. It knows the best buttons to push when needs to be pushed. Here's like a really interesting one is sometimes it makes sense to actually send an email on Monday instead of a cadence of like every 3 days, which some of our clients, sometimes it makes sense to go Monday and then send another one Tuesday, like just like boop, boop, right? And like who, in your right mind would do that? Even if you do that, are you really going to do it strategically across all of your accounts? But sometimes that works really well, which is like, hey, you owe on this invoice. And like the next day being like, hey, I'm just following up on a bunch of overdue invoices, saw you're still on the list. Boom. Right. It's just tactical, and much better than asking an individual to do it. Even if they have some best practices that like work for them themselves. So it's been really cool to see our system continue to learn and figure out best ways of driving collections on behalf of our clients.
You mentioned, Matt, being a part of Civil Ventures. Obviously, the big push for not only innovation in Canada with all the things going on in the world with tariffs, et cetera, but just being a part of a really big success story, I guess, in general in Canada. And how do you think that alliance per se is going to help on the AI development and being able to be a technology first company being connected to Simple Ventures as part of that journey for Harvest?
Yes, I can't say enough amazing things about Simple. Obviously, with Mike's leadership, Mike Cashin's leadership, he's created an amazing, additional organization under his purview. So that's a start. But Rachel Zimmer, who's the CEO, is also amazing, and she's put together an incredible team. Um, and they're just what they've built is a network of LPs, which is by far the greatest network of Canadian LPs you've ever seen. And what
Mm-hmm.
you get there is not only some really great people who can help them make investment decisions because they pull them in. And when I went to investment committee, it wasn't just Rachel and Mike. It was actually a group of like 10 or 12 LPs who had subject matter expertise. Were quite tricky to pitch to because all of a sudden they're just random people from the Canadian tech ecosystem who have been very successful, um, in my space, asking me questions about things. And I'm like 2 or 3 months into, an idea that I feel really strongly about. And so you get that, then you get that on the back end, right? So like once we raised a round, I pulled one of those LPs in to the board. So Kirk Simpson, who started Wave Accounting,
Yeah.
and had a big exit to HR Block, is on my board, and he's just been incredible. And then there's just like no shortage of people that I kind of message Rachel or she brings to me and says, "Hey, like we have this network. There are people that are really excited to get involved. Who would you like to chat with? Who do you think will be valuable?" And then they wrap the business in a bunch of support systems that make my job so much easier because there's like building a business and then there's building a company, and those two things are completely different. They're two different things, and on a day-to-day basis as CEO kind of have to do both. But having someone who says, "Okay, you focus on the business and we'll just give you all these assets that you can use for the formation of the company, legal, benefits, connect CPA on the accounting side," right? Like I just wrap myself in some things that Simple Ventures has already kind of preordained, and we're off to the races, which is why I feel so good about where we are only a couple months, post fundraise. And I think it's a true testament to like what they're doing and what they're trying to do in Canada. So I can't say enough great things about them. On the tech side, their first two port cards are actually not that technically enabled. They're amazing companies, but we're really the first um, kind of AI,
Yeah.
forward, and we can get into like what AI means for Harvest, but we're really the first AI forward, and so we really needed to find a CTO early, and so we went back out to kind of Rachel's and Simple Ventures network, and hiring a CTO these days is really interesting because there's obviously this like vibe coder, like stream here. And then there's this like senior engineer stream here. And in
Mm-hmm.
the middle is like, a little bit of tension about like, you can't just, vibe code your way to a product, from this side, and the like, well, you don't need, to build for 20 years on this side. And so really wanted to find someone. We got so lucky to find my CTO Poria, who like understands, from this side, the senior side, rate limits and,
Mm-hmm.
tech debt and things that are important to building a company, but also on this side, embracing new technologies and being able to build really quickly and ship new product features quickly. Um, so it's been an absolute blast, but we're super lucky. And I give a lot of credit to Simple Ventures for supporting not only like the business financially, but also a lot of the different aspects that make a company successful.
Yeah, I think that's especially the challenges of being a Canadian business. They can't be understated. And I think it's such a powerful thing that Simple Ventures is doing. You brought something up, Matt, though, about hiring a CTO. I do have a question on that. Coming from being a lawyer, obviously coming from a very strong business background, working in scaled out tech companies already, you obviously had the prerequisites to understand technology, but how do is your past experience, did that allow you to be able to make that decision of, like you said, vibe coding or leveraging AI in order to speed up development versus you still need architecture, security, all these things. A lot of apps are building out all these different security backend things as they're thinking about scale. Was your experience with Drop and your previous experience, is that what allowed you to figure out that balance in a CTO or who to hire?
I think like when you're non-technical and you're hiring a technical resource, you have to rely on other people to like
Mhm.
vet their technical skills, right? So again, leveraged a couple people through a relationship with Simple. There's a couple LPs that have like technical development firms and other things who put Poria through a bit of a ringer and said, yeah, he's awesome. Like he's technically sound, right? So yeah, I think people can do that. And you don't have to rely on yourself to like try to figure out a way to vet someone's technical skills. You can also call other founders. So I called some of the other with Poria's blessing, like I called some of his previous non-technical coworkers and just said, hey, what's it like to work with Poria? Because that's what's important to me, right? Not once you have a level of like, hey, this is how technical this person is, and
Mhm.
they're amazing at building, and they solve problems, and build amazing platforms. Great. Okay, great. Like that's like baseline. I need that. But then on the other side, it's like, okay, how do I work with um technical resources? Like how much handholding do they want? How much support do they need? Do they need to connect frequently, or do they go off and build? Do I need to feel like I'm connecting with them frequently only to know that they're actually building something? Like, do they like to be micromanaged? Do they, right? And for some reason, Poria and I have been extremely harmonious from day one. And so that most of the questions I had around, working with a new CTO were really around like what's their work style, and like, where could I potentially get in trouble? Where could my work style, not jive well with his work style and so forth? Because it's really super important, especially like we're only the two of us for now, right?
Yep.
So, on a daily basis, it's just the two of us working back and forth. Um, and it like you couldn't make a bigger mistake if you tried to hire someone that you think you're going to get along with, or think is going to help you build your entire company, and it just isn't successful. So really vetted the non-technical side and had somebody just rubber stamp the like, yes, he's amazing technically, because getting into that world would have been a waste of my time. To your point though, like working at a bunch of tech companies, you start to learn how to work with different technical leads. And I had
Mhm.
the pleasure of working with Darren Fung at Drop. He's incredible CTO and just engineer. And you get to learn, what's the best way of not solutioning for them, because like who am I to tell them how to build something or how to approach something? And like early days, you're like, hey, look, I have this revenue opportunity, like build this,
Mhm.
right? And then our client comes in and says, yeah, this is kind of like what I asked for, but like you didn't think about these 8 things. And it's just like looks like what I asked for, but it doesn't do
Mhm.
what I was hoping it would do. And so as you mature and you start working with better technical leads, you realize you're like, look, our client wants to do this. I'll leave it to you to figure out like what's the best way to like build that product and build it so that it can help more than just this one client is asking for it. I'm by no means the person who's going to tell you like how to build this, where to build it, where it should go, all those things. And so Poria and I have been, really, really great at being like, okay, our client's giving us this feedback. How do you think we should approach it? Let's ask them some questions. One thing that's really important to me is all of our clients, we've now, I won't say how many, but we've got a number of clients, and each of them have a Slack channel with us. They give us real time updates. They make product requests. To this morning, I just said, "Hey, how's this feature going?" They're like, "We're loving it. It's great." So it's really important to me to get real time feedback. Um, but yeah, you have to learn how to work with people, and just jamming ideas on them and saying, "Build this, do this," is never going to lead to a successful partnership.
For sure. And you've got the CTO now, you've got funding figured out, a mission critical I guess, problem you're solving in the sense that I think like right now, Intuit and Zero being multi-billion-dollar publicly traded companies, they have millions and millions of users that probably suffer from this problem. So it seems like you have a lot of the right ingredients. Matt, what have been the biggest challenge or challenges in getting Harvest going and figuring out what to build just in general for that user base?
It's a very good question. When we first started to ideate for Harvest, we reached out, or I reached out to a whole bunch of friendlies and said, "Hey, like, would you subscribe to a platform that helped you collect your overdue invoices?" And everyone was like, "Sure, why not?" And then they would give me their like hardest collections and basically be like, "Here's 10, like haven't heard from those clients in 3 years. Like, have at it." Right. And you're like, "Oh, this is so great. Like everyone's willing to give you work to do and they're willing to pay you. And like, what a great idea for a business." And you go out and the thing is, we're building a platform now, but before that, it was just me and I can do anything. I can call, I can do research, I can text, I can do anything. I could show up to someone's business and be like, "Hey, you owe one of my early clients some money and, can we
Yeah.
get this sorted out? Do they have the wrong phone number? Like what's going on?" So, your proof point initially is like, okay, people are interested in this and there is a way to like ultimately collect the money and then therefore there's a business model. Then you fast forward to like, okay, we have a CTO, you go back to those clients and they're like, "Well, Matt, like, what do you want us to subscribe to? You doing like collections? Like you have to build something." And so it takes time. And then you start to learn things, right? Like to your point about QuickBooks and Zero, their focus is all the bells and whistles that go into kind
Mhm.
of a more sophisticated accounting software. You'd probably know this better than me, but it's not like they've completely ignored invoices as like a product. Like they have an automated invoice function. They do have some
Mhm.
templates that can be sent out. They're probably investing in AI, across the entire platform. So what does that mean? It means we need to at least build a platform that gets us to slightly better than what they've already built, right? So we need to make sure. Now, most of the feedback we get is everyone ignores our emails from that are automated from the accounting software, right? So
Okay.
like, okay, so we've got a leg up there because this is like a human, it's AI, but it feels like it's a human sending the invoice, following up with you. And that's better than like QuickBooks automatically sends you an email that says, you have an overdue invoice. But we need to build products and functionality that then can convince our clients and show our clients that they will collect more money faster if they use our product versus than what's being offered to them as part of those ecosystems. And so that takes time. Um, I'll give you a really good example. We have we onboarded a client and we saw that they were only using us for like a third of their invoices. So like a third of their invoices, the rest you can pause or you can like turn off clients on Harvest, one of the things we built for a whole variety of reasons. Like sometimes you work with a big company and they require some sort of like
Yeah, you don't want
invoice
to quality.
submission to a supplier portal, right? Like, so
Yes, yes.
we don't do that. So you
Yeah,
can just
yeah.
turn that client off, right? But we work for your other 80% of clients. In this case, we were only doing like 30%. So I messaged them being like, "Hey, results are good. Like you can open this up to your remaining, percentage." And like, actually, those clients pay us in multiple installments. So sending them a message being like, "Hey, you owe us, money for this invoice," wouldn't really make much sense. It would actually have to say like, "You owe us for installment one." And if they pay that amount, then we'd have to say installment two. And so you're following up with a completely dynamic world. And I'm like, "Okay, how are you doing this right now?" They're like, "We have a HubSpot template where we go in and every day somebody checks what installment they're on, what day it is. And so the template exists, but we have to drop in installment number, amount owed, due date across
Mhm.
hundreds of invoices a month." So I went to Poria and I was like, "We've got to be able to figure this out." And Poria came up with like an incredible build. And so now you can toggle between a standard client and a client that pays on a actual like payment plan. And so what it does is it recognizes when money gets paid. If it's a third of it, it moves you to installment two. If not, it says you're overdue for installment one and two. And so we were just checking in on them today. They're like, "It's working great. You guys have no idea how many hours you've saved us on this." So if you had asked me 2 months ago, like, what product feature are you building next? And I had said, oh, we're going to build this product that like helps clients collect in multiple installments. Like, I would have been, full of shit. So you don't know what you're going to build until your clients, tell you, and as long as you're listening. But that's a good example of like something that QuickBooks and Xero just can't handle, aren't going to be able to, and aren't thinking about. And so if we can continue to add value just on the, like, we collect faster and better, and then we can be dynamic on, oh, do you mean we just need to tweak this so we can do it in installments instead of full payments? Then, like, we're off to the races. So it's going to be a challenge for sure, but there's lots of SMBs out there. There's lots of clients of QuickBooks and Xero that, need help with AR, and we're gonna slowly build an incredible product, and over time, I'm confident we'll continue to build a really great client base.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think your vision, Matt, is like, if you look at Intuit, you look at Zero, like we were speaking before we even hopped on about float and technology and accounting tech. And you can see that when a lot of the time, the main multi-billion dollar players they're focused on the ledger, but there's so many startups that will build an enhanced version of one aspect of the ledger. And like, case in point, like Intuit spends a lot of money on acquisitions. They bought T-Sheets. I think Trade Gecko is one of them. Zero bought Swift. And then you're seeing Float with all,
Melio, yeah.
yeah. And so all these applications, they're, because it's an open API environment, it's such a brilliant way for the best of breed technology to win. And I think what you guys are doing is tackling a problem that's been ignored a lot, especially in Canadian business, because it still is a pervasive problem. Last question I have for you, Matt, before I let you go here is, where do you see the business going in the next 3 to 5 years? Because I know it's early days, but if you were to take a crystal ball and think about AI and all these things changing in the world, where do you want Harvest to go over the next short run of your journey?
I want to think about how I answer this in the short term. Like, just like Airbnb, right? People are like, there's no way I would ever let anyone stay in my house.
Yeah.
Like, that's just crazy. And then obviously that turned out to be not the case. And it's like, there's no way I would get in anyone's car to drive me around, right? And we heard a lot of people, and I still talk to like law firms or more established, like, professional services firms, like, Matt, we're just never going to let, something else talk to our clients. Like, it's just like our clients are, like, our most important relationship. So it'd be crazy to let. And when you go back to them, you basically say, like, have you asked your team where they're drafting most of their emails? Because I can guarantee you they've got a chat. You probably bought ChatGPT for your entire team.
Of
So
course.
what they're doing effectively is taking invoice number, amount owed, and whatever, and then dropping that into ChatGPT, spinning up an email and saying, this is the second follow-up to this client, and drafting it. I was like, that's all we're doing. But we're doing it on an automated basis across all of your invoices, and you don't need anyone to, to do it for you. And so, they look at you, they're like, yeah, you know what? That's not that far off from like what we're actually doing. So this isn't as big of a leap. And people who play with ChatGPT themselves or Gemini or whatever it is instantly are like, yeah, God, I actually rely on it for a ton of things. And I should be more comfortable. So like, there's a comfort level that people are having with AI. I think we're not there on calling yet, but we have a lot of small businesses that have like non-recurring customers. And calling isn't great for like a dispute mechanism, but it's really great as a reminder. Sometimes you have the wrong email address, the email's bouncing or it's gone to spam. You just call someone, hey, Mike, I was at your house last week for an HVAC job and your invoice is outstanding. And Mike's like, you know what? I never got that invoice. Could you check my email and just send it to me? And the agent says, yeah, no, sure. Is it Mike P at, connectcba.com?
Yeah.
Like, actually, no, it's Michael P. Oh, wow. I don't know why I have it wrong, but I will send it to you. And off it goes. You're like, how many hours and money did that interaction save you? And do you care, Mike? Like, do you care that that's an AI agent or not? Like, it's meant to be clerical, at least first. right? But it has data to all the has access to all the data to make it functional. So I think we're not far from getting to calling. Texting is also another one. Like if you have an amount outstanding that's, non-recurring and below a certain threshold, I actually like getting a text. I have Apple Pay on my
For
phone.
sure.
I get a text, be like, hey, you forgot to pay this like bill. It's outstanding. You're a deadbeat.
Phone's
Like
always with
just
you.
double tap your phone and pay on like Apple Pay. Like it's so much easier than me having to. I have to find the bill on my desk. I got to open up my TD app. I got to send an e-transfer, whatever it is, right? Like there's no reason why we can't come to people and make it easier. And those are tools that aren't going to be used by the companies that we're signed to. So it's a huge value add. So people are just going to become more comfortable with AI looking and feeling like individuals or like the people they interact with. And they're going to get off their high horse about like, oh, I would never let AI um, correspond with like my clients. So I think that's one thing. Two, I think there's no shortage of value that we can provide SMBs. Like SMB value is very siloed right now. There's like lending, and especially in our space, there's factoring, and then there's
Hmm.
like accounts receivables, and there's all this stuff. And if you're an SMB, you kind of have like one of the biggest pain points I talk to SMEs, they're like, you know what the worst part is when I do need a debt collector, because inevitably I get, one or two or three needs a year. I
Yep.
got to call someone and engage with them and send them all the details. Like, could you just like, we'll just agree that like some of these aren't going to get collected no matter what Harvest does for us. Could you facilitate that for us? It's like, oh yeah, we could be a referral network for debt collection and save our clients all the hassle of, having to get on the phone and describe a situation. Like we have all the data for it. And then also providing them value upstream. Like we see a lot of the data that they're sharing on sales and how much they're collecting. And a lot of them are getting very bad offers on the like working capital loan sizes
Yeah.
and egregious S&B like loan offers. And can we improve that? Can we say, hey, with Harvest there, they've improved their collections, cash flow is much more consistent. The rate you've given them is the wrong rate, or the amount you've been willing to lend them is too low. They should be entitled to much more. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can layer on top here, but for now, this is just, can we make a really great platform that people are like, I'm really happy that this exists and saves me to the painkiller. We'll tie it back to the painkiller, but like it solves a really big pain in my life, which is, constantly being on top of overdue invoices and having someone I can point to that is doing it for me. And I'll get involved if I need to get involved, and I'll talk to clients if I need to talk to clients. But the vast majority of those conversations don't need to be had at the strategic level.
That's amazing. And yeah, Matt, that's a vision of something I wasn't even thinking about. The partnerships with potentially even like banks and tripping covenants, like just having Harvest there, maybe as a form of leverage over the rates, over whether companies are going to hit their metrics, all those things. And so there's probably huge partnership opportunities with big players as you guys scale and get product market fit.
That's the plan. You think about it like your insurance company gives you a bit of a discount for having an alarm system, right?
Hmm.
And so can like Harvest play the alarm system on your, receivables or your overdue collections just to make sure, hey, there's something there. It's monitoring, it's actively working on your behalf. And you should feel more comfortable, lender, that your client has something following along and you don't find out that, oh, they've just been so busy on the business, they're so busy over here that they haven't prioritized cash flow. And it's not that the business, to your point, it wasn't that like the business is doing poorly. It wasn't that they were focused on something wrong or that there's anything going wrong in the business. It's just that they weren't focused on the most important aspect, which is making sure they're collecting the money they're actually generating. So hopefully we can figure out our role, across all of those different companies. And there's a lot of amazing ones to potentially partner with.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited about what you're building, and I'm going to be following you guys as you guys continue to scale and grow.
Thank you, and I'll plug you back just because not that you haven't paid me to, but I'm really impressed with the Connect CPA team, and it's been much like Harvest. It's one of those things where like you want to be focused on your core competencies. And it's great having a team that you can trust to deal with a lot of the things that I don't want to be focused on day to day. So appreciate the company you've built and all the people that I've had the pleasure of meeting and getting to work with early in Harvest's timeline here. So looking forward to working with you and the team more.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Matt. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike.